Part 36. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 351. Owner. Hearing this, Long Xing and Long Guyan showed a hint of shock one after another, but then there was a hint of suspicion. Dragon Race's character, they themselves know, will never be someone else's pet unless they meet someone who saves their lives, because Dragon Race's pride does not allow them to do so. Take the entire 10 domains as an example, and you can see it. There is no one in the 10 realms who can raise their dragon race like a pet, very few, almost none. This is one of the reasons why dragon race rarely appears in the 10 domains. Of course, there is another reason, that is, no force in the 10 domains has the qualifications to cultivate dragons. When Xiaolong heard Long Ao's words, his eyes moved, but he didn't say anything. But in my heart, I was actually a little strange about Long Ao's appearance. As far as he knows, between heaven and earth, Azure Dragon was born in the land of Dragon Ancestor when it was first born, and there would be no missing heirs at all. After all, the Azure Dragon is one of the races that can be compared with the 9-clawed Golden Dragon. Zalong himself also knows that the Azure Dragon clan has never left any descendants. If you put it this way, where did the Azure Dragon in front of you come from? There is only one reason. He was born at the beginning of heaven and earth, and he was also a divine beast from all directions chosen by heaven himself. It has always been inside the egg and has not been born. Finally, Long Ao's master discovered him and rescued him, and then recognized him as his master. This explanation only made sense, but Zalong was too lazy to think about it. Anyway, they are all part of Dragon Race's bloodline, and their origins are not important. What is important is whether Azure Dragon will be loyal to Dragon Race. In fact, except for the Azure Dragon family, there is a situation where inheritance cannot produce heirs. The same is true for other races such as Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, White Tiger, so these 3 races are now very rare, or even invisible. In the 10 realms, the probability of seeing these 3 beasts is even smaller than their dragon race. After all, their dragon race is a race, with tens of thousands of dragon sons and grandsons, which is different from these 3 major races. But Vermilion Bird is also a member of the Phoenix family. Thinking of this, Zalong glanced at Yulong and Gu Xing, who were about to ask questions, and said, "Since Xiao Ao has recognized his master, there is no need for you to ask questions or even hold him accountable. After all, he is already an adult dragon and is qualified to find what he wants and what he wants to protect." After hearing this, the two looked at each other, nodded, and could only suppress the questions in their hearts. The few people didn't talk much after that. After all, what needed to be said was said. The rest was to take Long Ao back to the residence of the Azure Dragon clan. After half a stick of incense, several people came to the Azure Dragon clan. However, it is a bit desolate here, with a dilapidated look everywhere and a lack of life. After all, this is normal, because there are too few descendants of the Azure Dragon family, and each Azure Dragon almost stays in its own dragon cave and rarely comes out. But with Long Ao here, I believe that within a few thousand years, the Azure Dragon clan will become lively again. Long Xing's eyes moved, and he exuded an aura. Because of this aura, all the Azure Dragons staying in the dragon cave woke up from their slumber. Despite this, Wu Su still looked at Long Ao with a look that said, "I'm optimistic about you," and walked away quickly. Hearing this, the woman looked startled, but also a little confused. She looked at Long Xing beside her in confusion and asked, "I thought to myself, it looks like I have a little brother." Wu Su on the side looked at him in shock. "I don't know about this issue. Maybe there is some blood left outside. Otherwise, the power of his blood wouldn't be so strong." When the other Azure Dragons heard this, they looked at Long Xing with the same eyes, wanting to find out an answer. "Are you from my Azure Dragon clan?" I found that the Azure Dragon bloodline in you is so strong. All Azure Dragons do not walk in their true bodies, but in human form. After all, they are easier to move and more convenient. The woman looked Long Ao up and down with her beautiful eyes. She couldn't help but be slightly startled. She leaned closer to him and asked delicately. Long Seeing seemed not to have seen this scene. He put his hands behind his back and mysteriously returned to the dragon cave with the elders of the current Azure Dragon clan. Saw Long Ao behind Long Seeing. Then, all the dragon girls hurriedly gathered around Long Ao, touching him here and there. A woman with a slim figure and watery eyes seemed to feel something when she saw Gu Ao behind Long Seeing. She took small steps and walked over with her beautiful buttocks twisted. Lord Patriarch, are there any descendants of my Azure Dragon lineage left behind? The Azure Dragon family now has 7 male dragons and 4 female dragons, and their respective strengths have reached Saint and up. Isn't that too bold? Just touch someone else's place. Seeing this scene, Long Seeing laughed and replied. Yes, I am from the Azure Dragon clan. The fragrance on his body had already spread out, and when Long Ao smelled it, his face turned red and he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Let me tell you good news. Long Ao has the ability to inherit blood, and the curse will not affect him. The next moment, there was a loud noise in the dragon cave, and the entire dragon cave was shaken, as if the sky was falling apart. What? Everyone's hearts were shocked. This time, Long Ao's expression looked a little different, especially that of the woman just now and the remaining 3 dragon girls. Everyone looked at Long Ao with fiery eyes, with a strange expression on their faces, as if they were longing for something. But then, Long Seeing said something that shocked them. With the support of several people, they brought Long Ao into a huge dragon cave. Then, each of them took off their robes, revealing their proud figures. Everyone looked at each other, nodded suspiciously, and looked at Long Ao carefully. Long Ao, who was in a women's den, wanted to escape, but how could his strength stop these passionate and eager women? Next, Long Ao will enjoy the happiness of family relationship. Whether it is a dragon or an insect, it will be decided. Being looked at by the woman like this, Long Ao's face turned red and he was a little embarrassed, but after hearing this, he still nodded. He walked out of Dragon Cave with a puzzled look on his face. As a dragon from the Azure Dragon clan, Long Ao must stand up at this moment to save their bloodline. In this situation, it seemed as if I had seen some very delicious food. Long Ao was startled by this look. He couldn't help but take a step back and swallowed secretly. He seemed to feel a bad sense of crisis. The dragon girls who took off their clothes all looked at Long Ao with charming eyes, licked their lips, and then swarmed him. What's going on? Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 352. The Realm of Life and Death. In a dark canyon on the ground, there are sounds of death and silence everywhere, and there is also a trace of blood flowing in the air. This is the Evil Ghost Gate, one of the 4 major forces. At this moment, many high-level officials of the Evil Ghost sect appeared in a large hall. Everyone's expressions were serious, and they all exuded the aura of killing. Although the smell of killing was strong, it could not hide the melancholy and worry revealed in everyone's eyes. First seat. A burly man with a fierce look sat here. This person is the current leader of the Evil Ghost sect, and he is very fierce. I saw Huomengda Majin Deo sitting at the top of the table, looking down at the people below with a pair of tiger-like eyes. Then he slapped the table hard, pointed at a thin-looking man among the senior executives, and shouted angrily. Do you know that your temporary sexual desire has brought disaster to our Evil Ghost sect? Do you know? The fierce voice resounded in everyone's ears like a tiger's roar, causing everyone's hearts to tremble, their faces tense, their heads lowered, and they did not dare to say a word. Especially the thin-looking man. At this moment, He was extremely panicked, but he still had the courage to stand up and timidly raised his hands to Huo Meng and said, "Master, it's not my fault. It's this guy Xianing. He can't control the things underneath him. He wants to have sex with a beautiful woman when he sees one. I have tried to persuade them before, but we can't persuade him. What's more, his status is higher than mine. No matter how hard we try, we can't stop him. Besides, we didn't know that this group of people had such a big backing, especially one of the Saint Realm experts, who couldn't even defeat the three of us together." Hearing this, Huo Meng took a deep breath and glared at him fiercely. "You still have the nerve to say that you are really a bunch of losers. Stealing chicken but losing the rice just proves that you are a bunch of waste. It's a good idea for this guy Xianing to die. He'll save us from causing trouble for our evil ghost sect in the future." After venting his anger, Huo Meng seemed to feel a lot more comfortable. The scolding was only secondary, just a warning. The most important thing now was how to prepare for the next revenge. At this moment, the evil ghost gate was 50 miles away. There are dark clouds all over the sky here, thunder is rolling, strong winds are blowing, and the earth is shaking, as if a catastrophe is coming. There was still fighting here just now, and there were a lot of corpses on the ground. However, after sensing this terrifying aura, everyone left here in a hurry. Click. I saw a tremor in the void and a shattering sound. With a bang, a 10,000-foot immortal boat broke through the void and appeared here out of thin air. There were several blood-red battle flags standing on both sides of the ferry boat. The battle flags were fluttering, and the sound coming out was like thousands of troops shouting. "This is the Netherworld boat." On the bow of Netherworld Joe at this time, the figures of Soul Demon and Shadow Demon appeared here. They stood with their hands behind their hands, standing here quietly, exuding an aura that no strangers should enter. In addition to these people, the powerful men of the evil ghost sect also felt the earth-shattering sounds outside. The immortal boat looked down at them like a huge dragon, making everyone's eyes reveal a look of horror and fear. On the Netherworld boat, the demonic dragon was circling, its blood-red eyes looking at the people in the shield, revealing a hint of murderous intent. A sense of crisis arose in my heart. At this moment, his eyes were flashing with fear, and his heart was beating loudly, as if he was afraid of something. Unfortunately, this is meaningless to the Nether boat. If the Nether boat wanted to rush forward directly, the shield would have shattered like powder. An ant dares to fight against a giant dragon? Huh, in front of the extremely powerful Nether boat, formations and so on are all nothing. Huo Meng, the master of the evil ghost sect, looked better than everyone else. He was not afraid, but he frowned. It was this old man who just spoke. Then the demon dragon roared angrily, soared into the air, and appeared outside the evil ghost gate in the blink of an eye. Hearing this, the disciple nodded in panic and left here. His eyes happened to catch sight of this huge ferry boat located high in the sky, exuding a strange and ominous atmosphere. Quickly, open the sect protecting formation. This thing is coming towards us. It should be the strong man behind that force. Their eyes were full of shock and surprise. Seeing this, Bloodthirsty jumped up without hesitation and drove the dragon towards the evil ghost gate. As soon as the words fell, a glimmer of light appeared on the two of them. In the blink of an eye, they mixed together again and turned into a demonic shadow. The pair of netherworld swords also appeared in their hands. Is it possible? The soul demon and the shadow demon looked at the scene coldly, with a sinister smile on their lips. The cold eyes hidden in the mask of the demon shadow showed a trace of passion and excitement. The murderous intention that rushed into their minds made the two of them feel very passionate. It was precisely because of their fear that they fell into this situation. Otherwise, how could they have been in this situation if they were protected by a shield? I saw Bloodthirsty's palm slightly raised, and with a bang, the huge dragon broke through the void in an instant, and obediently came to Bloodthirsty's feet. Huo Meng's pupils shrank suddenly, as if he thought of something, and he quickly ordered to the disciples beside him. After a few breaths, a blood-red shield surrounded the entire dark canyon, like a shield. And he was too shocked to speak. On a giant peak in the sky, several Daoist figures appeared here. All of them were a group of middle-aged men and an old man with white beard and hair. Moreover, their eyes were extremely cold, like two sharp blades that could penetrate people's hearts. And such a scene that shocked the world was also seen by the famous forces in the realm of life and death. What on earth is this? It's so scary. This thing exudes such a powerful aura that even I, a saint, feel threatened. At this time, a bloodthirsty figure also appeared next to Moying. He was the only one who came, and Lin Tian and the others did not come. He was afraid that this thing was coming towards his own power. If that was the case, all his life's hard work would be in vain. Everyone looked alert and a little panicked, and then they walked out under the leadership of Huo Meng. Because this thing seemed to be heading in their direction. The same goes for the people next to him. Only one strong man from the ancient saint realm looked slightly better. The body also exuded the mighty dragon power, and the huge power made everyone feel a little suffocated because they were afraid. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 353. Huo Meng, the leader of the evil ghost sect, looked at the fear in the eyes of the disciple in front of him and couldn't help but clenched his fists, but he also felt helpless. Although he is not afraid of the dragon in front of him, you must know that this is the dragon race. Dare I ask what forces can control the dragon race? The answer is extremely rare. So at this moment, Huo Meng is wondering whether there is dragon race behind this force. If this were the case, then the evil ghost sect would have no chance of surviving. After all, the dragon race is an extremely mysterious race in the eyes of the world. No one knows where they live or where they will appear. And this huge momentum naturally attracted the attention of the other three major forces. However, at this time, the faces of the leaders of the three major forces were a little ugly, and there was a trace of hesitation in their eyes. It seems that the evil ghost sect is really going to perish this time. How can they survive if they are offended by such a force? A man wearing a blood-red robe, with an evil face and a hint of feminine temperament spoke out. This person is the master of the evil demon palace, Qi Huang. The other two people did not speak when they heard this. Their eyes were fixed on this scene. They were hesitating whether they should help or not. Since they could be called the four major forces, they would naturally be both prosperous and disadvantaged. Almost whenever something happens, the other three major forces will help, but this time it seems that they are in a bit of a dilemma. Because both of them thought that dragon race was behind this force, and they were afraid that dragon race would take action against them. Dragon race is not something a strong immortal emperor can resist. Even the ancestor is not enough to watch, because dragon race has two ancestors, and they are both said to be invincible in the same realm. Only the Phoenix clan is qualified to compete with dragon race. Of course, the top 10 domain lords are also qualified, and they are the kind that can be crushed. The leader of the evil ghost sect doesn't know yet that the three powerful people with whom he has good relations are no longer prepared to help him. Huo Meng only knew that his evil ghost sect might be destroyed today, but at least one or two of his disciples could escape from here. In this way, when the disciples in the sect gain strength in the future, not to mention revenge, they can also re-establish the evil ghost sect. At least they will not disappear from the world. But the thin-looking man was different. His eyes were full of fear and panic, and he had the idea of escape, but unfortunately this time, he couldn't escape at all. Because he felt that someone on the nether boat had been paying attention to him. Seeing the helpless expressions of everyone in the evil ghost sect, the bloodthirsty man standing on the demon dragon showed a hint of sneer and disdain. When dealing with these people, there is no need to show any mercy to them, because these people can no longer be called human beings. Each of their hands is covered with countless blood, and they are all innocent people. Even more evil than the Shadow Palace and Soul Palace. Clang. But unfortunately, Wu Yan had long been wary of Xian. Moreover, in his eyes, the fierce speed was as slow as a snail, and he easily blocked it with his knife. The demonic shadow also held the netherworld double blade in hand, stepped on the void, and came to the crowd step by step. With cold and lonely eyes, he looked down at the people in the shield. Getting back to the topic, one after another black demonic energy was seen gathering around Bloodthirst, and in an instant, the demonic dragon under his feet let out a roar. All of them had cold eyes and cold expressions, and a chill erupted from the black sharp blades in their hands. If you want to destroy my power, you must first pass the level of the sect leader. I want to see how strong you are. The aura on his body was firmly against the murderous intention generated by everyone, and in a short period of time, the aura actually gained the upper hand. I'll give you a stick of incense to defeat me. If you can't do it, then you can only prepare to suffer torture that is worse than life. The demonic shadow looked at everyone from above, like a god, with a hint of charity in every word and action. When it comes to dueling, Wu Yan likes it best. Thinking of this, Huo Meng walked out of the formation without fear, just like a general who can block 10,000 people. Seeing this scene, everyone looked at each other with a hint of ridicule in their eyes, without any intention of challenging each other. The fighting spirit in his eyes was awe-inspiring, and the dragon power on his body was displayed without any scruples at this moment. Saying this, the demon shadow just wanted to scare them with words. After all, it would save some time to kill them. The dragon's power and the black demonic energy gradually began to merge, turning into black dragons one after another. The black dragons hung around the bloodthirsty body, looking at the people in the shield with fixed eyes. Why fight alone when you can fight in a group? Especially for those who are weak, a one-on-one fight would be a fool's errand. Wouldn't it be better to devour them with a crowd tactic? A fiery red blade appeared in his hand, and the aura of the peak ancient saint was firmly exuding from his body. Huo Meng's face was shocked, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, but he had no time to think too much and continued to rush towards Wu Yan. And this person is Wu Yan. He has not left, but is preparing to eradicate this evil ghost sect with the second palace. Although the second palace is bloodthirsty, every time they take action against a force, they will be given two choices. Hearing this, Huo Meng snorted coldly. How could he be afraid if he was in the same realm? The next moment, he rushed over at lightning speed, as if he wanted to catch Wu Yan off guard. Boom! And a double-edged axe appeared in Huo Meng's hand. The axe exuded a majestic evil spirit and could not stop shaking. Wherever it passed, the void instantly shattered, and the power of laws such as gold, fire, and water continued to flash through. At this time, the powerful men from the second hall who were on the nether boat also came down, uniformly wearing black robes and purple robes. But Huo Meng looked a little angry when he heard this, and his eyes revealed a trace of determination. Since he was going to die, why not die heroically? It was at this glance that Huo Meng suddenly felt that a powerful person was staring at him. Either death or surrender. But Wu Yan's figure appeared in front of everyone, stood up, and looked at Huo Meng opposite with cold eyes. As the sect leader, Huo Meng had no choice but to look at each other without hesitation. Evil Ghost Sect, you have completely touched the majesty of the forces behind me, and you dare to provoke us. The only thing waiting for you is death. Don't choose to resist stubbornly, otherwise, the punishment you receive will be much more severe. Come. Who dares to fight me one-on-one? After all, this approach is also in line with the Wu people's righteous behavior. Seeing the crowd of Wu Yang outside, and everyone was filled with murderous intent, everyone in the evil ghost sect couldn't help but look at each other, swallowed, and some people even sat down, looking at the scene in fear. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 354. But it was a pity that Wu Yan would not give him a chance this time. With a bang, a fierce flame appeared around him. Finally, under Wu Yan's control, he rushed straight away like a fire dragon and collided with Huo Meng. Boom! The flames were instantly defeated by Huo Meng, which made him a little surprised. But in the blink of an eye, a spark appeared on his clothes. In an instant, the fire was fierce, and within a few breaths, Huo Meng's body was filled with blazing flames. Huo Meng didn't care about this at first, thinking it was just an ordinary flame, so he continued to rush towards Wu Yan. But when the flame burned for a long time, he discovered that the flame was actually burning his soul. Ah! Huo Meng screamed instantly, his face was ferocious, and the pain in his soul penetrated into his heart. This scene was seen by the leaders of the other three major forces, and they couldn't help but exclaimed. It turns out to be the burning sky flame body, the kind of flame that can burn out all the power in the world. This person is probably the best in the ancient saint realm. Even I am no match for him. The leader of the Black Water sect, who was dressed in black, looked startled when he saw this scene, then shook his head and laughed at himself. When the two people beside him saw this, their eyes were shocked and they didn't speak, but there was a trace of solemnity in their eyes. But what actually surprised them was that Huo Meng, a strong man at the pinnacle of the ancient saint realm, was suppressed like this. How long has this battle lasted? It was only half a stick of incense, and I didn't even know if it was there. Therefore, this is also the reason why the thin-looking man did not dare to come forward. If he stood up early, he would probably be killed instantly. But it's different now. Wu Yan has relaxed his vigilance on himself at this time and can carry out a sneak attack. The success or failure depends on this step. Thinking of this, the thin-looking man walked aside. With a sharp look in his eyes, he used the power of the law of earth. The ground began to crack, and cone-shaped boulders one after another began to rush towards Wu Yan. Wu Yan, who was controlling the flames to scorch the fire, was shocked, with a flash of anger, and gave the man a fierce look, as if to say, "You will be here soon." The thin-faced man was a little frightened by this look, but he still used the law of earth to attack him without hesitation. The earth continued to shatter, and countless boulders began to sweep out. Although Wu Yan is very powerful, he is not so conceited that he can physically block the damage caused to him by the peak ancient saint. He could only passively stop releasing the flames and start attacking the incoming boulders. Bang bang bang. In just a few breaths, the boulder was shattered. The strong men from other forces couldn't help but swallowed when they saw this scene. If they had used this tactic, they would have been devoured by countless monsters. But just like that, Huo Meng on the other side took this opportunity and hurriedly swallowed a pill, and the flame that burned his soul gradually began to dissipate until it disappeared. This makes some people in the Wu clan feel a little uncomfortable. After all, the Wu clan except for Wu Yan, a strong man at the peak of the ancient saint. Puff! Helping the strong men of the second hall one after another to pull out of danger. Before he could react, it stabbed directly into his heart. In an instant, raging fireballs and thunder and lightning continued to sweep across the battlefield, and countless laws flowed like a long river. He would want to come back after what he suffered, and he also wanted Wu Yan to taste that pain. Seeing this scene, the strong man from the evil ghost sect felt his scalp numb, but he could only bite the bullet and resist. In response, Demon Shadow just sneered, and his figure appeared behind a powerful immortal venerable like a ghost. From time to time, I have to be on guard against the sneak attacks of these monsters, and as a result, other strong men from the Wu tribe find the opportunity to kill them with one strike. The leaders of the three major forces are also strong men who have reached the peak of the ancient saint, and each of them has brought one or two elders who have reached the peak of the ancient saint. Even so, Huomen will also have sequelae. Furthermore, I feel that the person standing behind these people is not necessarily dragon race. Otherwise, why has only this black dragon appeared until now, and no other strong dragon race has appeared? Despite this, their situation did not improve. And they have only reached around mid-late stage. Because of this scene, the other strong men of the evil ghost sect also began to become determined, no longer timid, walked out of the formation, and began to launch a fierce attack on everyone in the second hall. After that, they followed the strong men of the Wu clan and kept summoning the hell monsters, seeming to want to annex everyone in the evil ghost sect with the human sea tactic. In an instant, a large amount of blood covered the body of the netherworld swords, and the red blood covered it with a strange and terrifying veil. This counterattack caught everyone in the second hall off guard, but it was not a serious problem. They continued to consume mana to summon annoying monsters. In just a few breaths, countless hell monsters were standing nearby, covering them as far as the eye could see. Why don't we take this opportunity to kill all these people? After all, the only threats in the field are the giant immortal boat and the strong man at the peak of the ancient saint realm. But these monsters have no effect on strong people. Just a breath can kill many people. There are only a dozen saints and a few ancient saints among the others. After hearing this, the other two lowered their heads and thought for a while. After a long time, they looked at the Blackwater sect leader and replied. At this time, Bloodthirsty controlled the demon dragon and started fighting with other strong men. Of course, this strength alone was not enough. Such a scene made the faces of those rescued second halls reveal a look of gratitude. But at this moment, everyone from the Wu clan jumped off the nether boat, took out the immortal weapon and started rushing into the chaotic crowd. The strong men who led their own forces launched a counter-attack against Erdian and the Wu clan. Seeing this scene, the leaders of the other three major forces looked at each other, as if the decision in their hearts had changed. The leader of the Blackwater sect said. This method was very easy to use, and in a blink of an eye, it was learned by other strong men from the second palace. They began to hide behind the strong men of the Wu clan and became summoners, and one ferocious monster after another was summoned by them. Immediately, the demon shadow controlled the blade and twisted it tightly, and then pulled it out fiercely. Then he angrily attacked Wu Yan. After the words fell, the three of them no longer hesitated. Let's give it a try. Anyway, we and the evil ghost sect will both prosper and lose. There may be some hope if we join forces. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 355. It can only play a diversionary role. It is impossible to say that it is a confrontation. So gradually, the scene was suppressed. The situation on Wu Yan's side is also quite miserable. One person has to deal with 7 peak ancient saints. He has also been restrained by strong men such as the Thin Man using the power of the Law of Earth. As a result, he couldn't help but feel a little tired after going on for a long time. Although his strength was strong, he was not strong enough to fight against the 7 peak ancient saints by himself. Even so, the 7 ancient saints did not take advantage of Wu Yan's fatigue to launch a fierce attack on him. Instead, he kept looking for his flaws with his eyes, as if he wanted to kill him with one blow. Because of the body's constitution, they still knew how terrifying it was, so they had to act with caution. After all, no one here wanted to be the first to die, they all had their own thoughts and plans. Anyway, the 7 of them saw that there was no strong support from the second hall, so spending time waiting for a while would not have any impact. On the contrary, it can also bring the joy of killing to their men. And Moying seemed to realize that continuing like this was not an option, and after killing a group of powerful men, he retreated. Then a protector was replaced and told him, "Take out the formation I gave you before and use it, so that we will be the only ones killed." The protector nodded heavily. Immediately, thoughts began to spread to everyone's minds. The next moment, one formation after another appeared in their minds, and then everyone changed from being scattered to converging. A large number of strong men also surrounded everyone in the second hall, and this time it was them who sneered. But after a few breaths, they stopped laughing. Because a faint light began to appear on all the strong men of the second hall, and then continued to converge on every strong man of the second hall. The dim light is like starlight, shining constantly. In the blink of an eye, one after another terrifying formations appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Moreover, these are all ancient formations that have been lost. Can everyone watching this not be shocked? Who are the forces behind these people? It's really extraordinary. These dozens of formations are actually ancient formations that have been lost for a long time. It seems we can't simply suppress them. We need to spend time with this group of people. Otherwise, if this continues, we will die miserably. The leader of the Blackwater sect looked at the leaders of the three major forces and said solemnly, "This is not an exaggeration. But some of these ancient formations can make them fall into a dream, some can swallow their souls, and some can even make them kill themselves. Aren't these formations terrifying? And it's the kind that doesn't limit realms." Seeing this, the other three nodded seriously. They naturally understood the importance of this. Then everyone retreated to the back in panic, looking at the second palace and others with vigilant eyes. At this time, Wu Yan, who was fighting with the 7 strong ancient saints, also retreated. His eyes moved, he looked at the demonic figure on the side, and asked, "What should we do now? If we continue like this, we will be the losers in the end." The demonic shadow glanced at him, narrowed his eyes slightly, and did not reply. He didn't want to use the ancient formation to kill these people, he just wanted to delay it for a while. But this time they were a little too confident. They should have called in more powerful people, called the 8 masters of the peaks, and set up an 8-demon formation. If so, dealing with this group of people would not be a problem. At the same time, in the main hall of Profound Heaven sect, Qin, who was closing his eyes to nurturing spirit, suddenly opened his eyes, but lowered them again and murmured, "It seems that Soul Demon and the others are in trouble. What should I do?" Based on the situation they encountered, even if we call all the peak masters of Profound Heaven sect, they may not be able to get there. After all, there are 2 major realms in between. Qin Xian sat on the throne and fell into deep thought. He placed his fingers on the armrest and kept tapping, making a clicking sound in the silent hall. After a while, Qin Xian's eyes moved and he said, "There is nothing we can do. Sure enough, we still have to rely on you to solve the problem in the end." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw on the other side, Qin Feng, who was in the holy state, had come back to his senses from practicing. Because of his domain power, he was accepted as a direct disciple by a deputy temple master as soon as he was brought into the human temple. He also won first place in a competition not long ago and was named the human saint child by the master of the human temple. At that time, he was so radiant that all the disciples in the human temple were proud of Qin Feng as their idol. Moreover, with the infusion of top resources, Qin Feng's strength has quickly reached the 8th layer of the Immortal King realm. In fact, with the infusion of so many resources, there are actually relatively few people who can cultivate the 8th layer of the Immortal King realm. However, Qin Feng did not devour these resources for himself, but secretly sent some of the valuable resources back to the Profound Heaven sect. And he himself only enjoyed about 70% of it. Therefore, the strength is only the 8th layer of the Immortal King realm. Even so, it cannot conceal his mysterious and powerful aura. After all, everyone feels that Qin Feng, who has the power of the domain, should absorb resources several times higher than ordinary people in order to improve his cultivation. So no one doubted it, even the master of the human temple thought so. Then Qin Feng stood up. The place he was in now was a hall. This was his own hall, called Saint Child Hall. The reason why he stopped practicing was that he received a message from his main body and encountered some troubles that he needed to solve. Looks like I need to stretch my muscles a bit, just in time to test my strength. After all, I have so many opportunities, let me see if I can fight with those people. Qin Feng clenched his fist and walked out of the hall. At this time, two strong men were standing guard outside the main hall with respectful expressions. Seeing Qin Feng coming out, the two of them quickly leaned over and cupped their hands and said, "Saint Child." Qin Feng glanced at the two of them, nodded slightly, and asked, "Has anyone challenged me recently?" Hearing this, the two of them shook their heads in Nian. No, after all, with Lord Saint Child's extreme talent, who would dare to challenge you? Qin Feng smiled and said nothing. Although he has the status of Saint Child, there are naturally people who will covet his status. Therefore, recently there have been some highly talented young people coming to him to challenge him. I want to trample him under my feet and become the Saint Child myself. Afterwards, Qin Fengli spent half a stick of incense and arrived alone at the place where his master lived. Qin Feng thought for a while, but still wanted to trouble his master to go, because with his speed, it seemed that he couldn't get there. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 356. Here is a mountain with a height of 10,000 feet, and there are cranes flying everywhere nearby, and on top of this mountain, there is a grand hall with golden light standing here. At this time, inside the magnificent hall, a middle-aged man wearing a gold silk robe sat cross-legged next to a table and chair with a chessboard on it. His eyes were deep and golden, looking calm. This person is Qin Feng's master and one of the three deputy palace masters of the human race, Tianxin Palace Master Jiking. Jiking seemed to sense something, her eyes moved slightly, she looked outside the hall with a smile on her lips, and shouted softly, "Okay, come in, my teacher has already sensed you." Hearing this, Qin Feng, who was outside the hall, quickly walked in and bowed his hands to Jiqing with a respectful expression, "Master." Jiking nodded and asked casually, "Why do you want me to be my teacher?" A smile instantly appeared on Qin Feng's face and he replied, "Of course it's something big." "Oh." Jiqing glanced at him and raised her eyebrows, "What's the big deal? Could it be that demon race is attacking?" Qin Feng shook his head, "Of course not. The sect I stayed in before encountered some troubles. Don't I want to ask Master for help?" Jiking chuckled and waved to him, indicating that he would sit next to her. After Qin Feng sat over, Jiking sighed and said helplessly, "I knew there was absolutely no good thing coming from you. I wonder what kind of trouble your previous sect encountered? As long as it's not something that endangers all sentient beings, I can make an exception and help." Qin Feng shook his head and said, "How can it be something that harms all sentient beings? On the contrary, this is a matter of eliminating harm for the people. Master, have you ever heard of the four major forces in the realm of life and death?" Jiqing nodded, "Of course I know that these four major forces are also a shame to our human race." But he seemed to notice something, looked at Qin Feng and asked, "Is it possible that your sect was besieged by these four major forces when they went to eliminate them?" Qin Feng chuckled and said, "Master guessed half of it right." Looking at Qin Feng's appearance, Jiking glanced at him helplessly and said, "Stop being pretentious and tell me in detail." Seeing this, Qin Feng spent half a stick of incense telling Jiqing the whole story in detail. After a long while, Jiking sighed deeply, "So that's how it is. Since we are eliminating harm for the people, then I should help no matter what I say, but..." At the end of the sentence, Jiking paused again, as if there was something unspeakable. "Master, what's wrong? Is it possible that as the deputy palace master, Master can't handle this matter? Ji Qing glanced at him and shook her head. Of course not, but there is an immortal emperor-level powerhouse in the realm of life and death, and I even know him. The evil demon palace among the four major forces in the realm of life and death is his force. I'm afraid that after this matter is resolved, this guy will be unyielding. Speaking of which, there are actually 4 immortal emperors in the realm of life and death. It's just that the other 3 immortal emperors have died, and only this younger immortal emperor has survived. But what's the point of closing the evil ghost sect? Could it be that the immortal emperor of our evil ghost sect will come out to make trouble? Qin Feng was a little confused. No. Jiking shook her head and said. You just said that the other 3 major forces also help the evil ghost sect, so it is still a bit troublesome to deal with this matter. This. Qin Feng's eyes showed a hint of disappointment. Of course, this was pretending, just to win Ji Qing's sympathy. Ji Qing also happened to see the scene, her eyes moved, her heart softened, she sighed and whispered. I'll go discuss it with the palace master first. After all, he is also an immortal emperor, and his strength is not weaker than mine. It would be better to discuss it with the palace master. Hearing this, Qin Feng's disappointed eyes revealed a glimmer of hope, and he looked at Ji Qing expectantly and nodded. Then good master, I'm waiting for you here, but the time must be faster, I'm afraid they won't be able to hold on anymore. Ji Qing nodded, and his figure dissipated in place like dust and smoke. After half a stick of incense, Ji Qing returned here, looked at Qin Feng and nodded, okay, let's go. Good. Qin Feng nodded happily. Then it took less than 2 breaths to arrive at the realm of life and death, and Qin Feng happened to see the 2 major forces confronting each other. At this time, Moying and others also saw Qin Feng's figure. The pupils shrank and they looked at each other for a few times without speaking. Jiking was standing in the air with her hands behind her back, looking at the scene with her eyes until she saw the nether boat not far away. Her dull eyes moved slightly, revealing a hint of surprise. He really didn't expect that a weak force would own such an immortal boat, and there was a powerful formation on top of this immortal boat. With the blessing of this formation, he could improve himself to a great level. This kind of formation is not available even in temples of other races. But Jiking did not ask. After all, the main business this time was to resolve the dispute between the 2 major forces. Then, looking at everyone, he said in a deep voice. I am Jiking, the deputy master of the human race temple. This time I am here to handle some private matters. I hope some forces will not interfere, otherwise don't blame me for being rude. Hearing the words, the leaders of the 4 major forces looked at each other. Simply because of the position of deputy master of the human temple, they could not be offended. If the deputy palace master does not have an immortal emperor, he will not be able to serve. In other words, the person standing in front of them now is a powerful immortal emperor who has not been around for a long time. However, the master of the evil demon palace did not look surprised. After all, there is a powerful immortal emperor sitting behind him. But the other 3 major forces did not have the powerful immortal emperor sitting in charge, so they could only lower their heads and bow their hands to Ji Qing respectfully. Being undefeated when meeting an emperor is a taboo in the 10 domains. Then, the master of the evil ghost sect stood up and said respectfully to Ji Qing. Senior, Junior would like to ask, whose personal affairs are you dealing with? You must know that this group of people came to attack my realm of life and death. Our joint attack this time is just for self-protection. Snort. Hearing this, Ji Qing snorted coldly, looked at him with cold eyes, and angrily said. I am talking about you. Your evil ghost sect has been against the elders of Profound Heaven sect first, and you almost violated their elders. Therefore, this matter is reasonable and your evil ghost sect will disappear from the world. And I am here to take care of this matter, so the other three major forces should not meddle in their own business here. Otherwise, even if there is a strong immortal emperor behind you, I will also destroy you. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 357. After the words fell, Qin Tian, who was beside Ji Qing, directly used the power of the domain. With a bang, everyone present, except for Profound Heaven Sect and others, the strong men of the other four major forces themselves dropped a great level. This scene made them look shocked, their eyes full of astonishment and disbelief. When Huo Meng, the leader of the evil ghost sect, saw this scene, he couldn't help but swallowed. If he said this, then wouldn't there be no hope for his evil ghost sect? No. Absolutely not. Huo Meng clenched his fists and wanted to stand up and speak, but found that based on his status, he did not seem to be qualified to talk to the immortal emperor. Just when Huo Meng was desperate. Maybe God has the virtue of rebirth, or maybe God has no eyes. An arrogant laughter spread to the world. Ha 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 ha. If justice is true, you can still say this. I will take care of this matter today. Hearing this, Ji Qing, who was originally calm, turned his face and instinctively protected Qin Feng behind him with his hands. The next moment, a thunderous sound resounded between heaven and earth. An old man wearing a long white coat with an old but calm face appeared in front of everyone. The old man's cloudy eyes were full of coldness. This person is none other than the ancestor of the evil demon palace, Lu Wanbing. When Qi Huang, the master of the evil demon palace who was in mid-air, saw this scene, his expression suddenly showed joy. He quickly came over and shouted respectfully. Ancestor, ancestor, why are you here? Lu Wanbing glanced at him angrily and said. If I don't come, I'm afraid I'll only see your body later. Qi Huang scratched his head and smiled. Only in front of his ancestor would he show such an expression. Then Lu Wanbing looked at Jiking opposite with slightly angry eyes, his aura shook, and he sneered. I wonder if the human temple wants to violate the rules? Doesn't the Lord of Jiking Palace know that there are rules in my realm of life and death and in the human temple? I have said it thousands of years ago, if you don't offend me, I won't offend you. But now, taking advantage of the death of the other three immortal emperors in my realm of life and death, I took this opportunity to annex my realm of life and death, and even said such righteous words. Hearing this, Ji Qing snorted coldly and said nothing, but he could not hide the anger on his face. In an instant, Jiking itself exuded a terrifying pressure. Boom! High in the sky, thunder suddenly rolled and thunder clouds spread all over the place. The great Dao Law began to sweep across the surrounding area, and it became cold within 10,000 miles, and then became hot again in the blink of an eye. The four seasons nearby were constantly changing, which made everyone present feel uncomfortable. Everyone's expressions were very ugly, and a trace of powerlessness and despair arose in their hearts, as if their lives no longer belonged to them from this moment on. Then, Ji Qing saw the terrifying great Dao Law emerging from his hand, looked at Lu Wanbing with cold eyes, and said in a cold tone. After all, when the immortal emperor comes, he either destroys a place or fights with top experts. At the same time, the surge of immortal emperor's powerful aura naturally attracted the attention of all the powerful people in the realm of life and death here. Killing him would undoubtedly be a setback for him, and even if the news of Lu Wanbing's death spread, he might be called a villain by the world. Because some people don't want Lu Wanbing to die, even if he killed many people. As soon as the words fell, Lu Wanbing himself was seen emitting a monstrous golden light, and dark clouds suddenly roared high in the sky. This scene made the people of the four major forces look at each other in shock. Even so, it could not hide the fear in their eyes. So Jiking had no choice but to endure it. Although he couldn't kill him, it didn't mean that he couldn't do it. In just a few breaths, Lu Wanbing's strength instantly dropped to that of the ancient sage. This situation made Lu Wanbing's pupils shrink, as if he thought of something, and he looked fiercely at Qin Feng, who was staying beside Jing Qing. Everyone did not dare to take a breath for fear that it would affect themselves. This was also the first time they had seen the strength of the powerful immortal emperor. Hearing this, Ji Qing's expression changed. Although Lu Wanbing was a scumbag of the human race, he was still the immortal emperor of the human race. Hearing this, Lu Wanbing was not afraid, he sneered and said bluntly. After saying these words, Wu Yan's eyes also glowed with blazing light, and a trace of determination flashed in his heart, as if he wanted to touch the immortal emperor's barrier even more. The power of the domain is not limited to any realm. It can bring others down to a big realm. No wonder. Haha, it turns out you have an apprentice with domain power. But there is no doubt that they are showing respect. The arrival of the immortal emperor is not good news. Seeing this scene, Ji Qing's eyes narrowed, and she smiled, as if there was some way to hide it, and then said to Qin Feng on the side. Then he stepped on his left foot, and a wave of air began to sweep around him, and the originally terrifying pressure disappeared instantly. Do you dare? If you dare, just kill me. I want to see if you can ignore that rule. The Buddha statue high in the sky also began to shatter, and a golden light dissipated into the world. Want to die? Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded, with a mocking smile on his lips, and the power of the destruction domain instantly pounced on Lu Wanbing. It's true that I don't dare to kill you, but that doesn't mean I can't seriously injure you. It can be regarded as an explanation for those innocent people who died for so many years. Feeling the pressure coming towards him, Lu Wanbing laughed coldly, with a hint of disdain. In an instant, the great Dao Sanskrit sound came. A huge golden Buddha statue appears in the void. The golden eyes of the Buddha reveal sorrow and desolation. When people look at it, they will feel pious and respectful. Is this the immortal emperor? Such a powerful force. Just a breath can cause the heaven and earth to shake. The seasons are constantly changing. It is indeed not comparable to the ancient saints. Jiking's expression remained unchanged and she didn't speak. She raised her palm and in an instant, the void instantly shattered, and a big hand of nothingness directly pinched Lu Wanbing on the opposite side. When Wu Yan, who was in the crowd, saw this scene, he clenched his fists and felt a sense of powerlessness, saying, Feng release the power of your domain and let him see it. Do I really think I'm afraid of you? Do you really think that you, the human race temple, are the same person? Humph, I want to see how strong you are and whether you have improved over the years. Although they didn't see a stunning battle, the confrontation between the two powerful immortal emperors was enough to satisfy them. When the time comes, demon race will take this opportunity to spread rumors with great splendor. Ji Qing turned a blind eye to this, and her body instantly appeared in front of Lu Wanbing, looking at him from above, and said coldly. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 358. The next moment, Ji Qing directly penetrated the terrifying Great Dao Law into Lu Wanbing's body. The moment the Great Dao Law entered, Lu Wanbing instantly let out a violent scream, showing no sign of the majesty of a powerful immortal emperor. Ah! Then he spat out a mouthful of thick blood. Boom! The emperor's blood fell to the ground, exuding a breath of vitality. The originally dry ground seemed to be reborn, and was once again covered with flowers and grass. Even the flowers and plants gave birth to wisdom, dancing happily. But no one paid attention to these. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Lu Wanbing's current appearance. He was extremely miserable now. Less than a minute into his appearance, he was directly suppressed. After doing all this, Ji Qing glanced coldly around the area, like a tiger patrolling his territory. Such a scene naturally caused those strong men to retreat quickly. Ji Qing snorted coldly, looked at the people from the four major forces, and said, I can spare your lives, but the master of the evil ghost sect will eventually die. As soon as he finished speaking, the master of the evil ghost sect was instantly torn into pieces, turned into dust, and dissipated in the eyes of everyone. This scene frightened everyone who survived and did not dare to move for a moment. They could only clench their fists and stared with fear in their eyes. This approach also made everyone in the second hall look startled, and they couldn't help but look at each other. At this time, Qin Feng's figure appeared in front of them, patted the demon shadow on the shoulder and said, "I have done everything I can. Saving you this time can be regarded as my repayment for what Profound Heaven Sect did to me in the first place." Immediately, he pointed his finger at the panic-filled evil ghost sect crowd. "Whether you kill or not kill these remaining people, I won't care about them. The cause and effect has been repaid. No matter what happens to Profound Heaven Sect in the future, I will never take action again." After finishing speaking, Qin Feng turned around, and when people looked at him from the back, he looked a little desolate and lonely. Of course, this was pretended by Qin Feng to show Ji Cheng. When Ji Qing, who was not far away, saw this scene, he believed it directly. He was satisfied with what Qin Feng just said. Then he waved his big hand, and a crack appeared in front of him. He looked at Qin Feng and said, "Feng let's go." Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded and followed Ji Qing in. The demonic figure looked at the two disappearing figures, his eyes moved, and he looked at the remaining members of the evil ghost section without hesitation. He said coldly, "Do it." After everyone heard this, they quickly reacted, "Yes." Then he waved the sharp blade in his hand without any scruples and began to massacre everyone in the evil ghost sect. The evil ghost sect wanted to resist, but it seemed so small among the hell monsters that were like a tide of corpses, and resistance was of no use at all. In just a few breaths, they were swallowed up by the demons from hell. And everyone from the three major forces could only watch the scene helplessly, unable to do anything. Because Jiking had just spoken, saying that if the evil ghost sect was to die, it must die, and they had no choice. After a while, only a pile of corpses were left on the ground, and the pungent smell of blood was everywhere in the air. In the end, Moying just looked at the three major forces coldly and led his people back to the nether boat. Immediately, the void tore apart, a crack appeared, and the nether boat penetrated directly into the space crack and disappeared in front of everyone. After a long time, the leader of Ghost Water Sect sighed, shook his head and said, "I didn't expect that the human race temple is still related to them, and the human race temple now has a genius with the power of the domain." Many high-level officials gathered here and looked at the figure above with respectful expressions. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been suppressed by this group of people just now. Otherwise, we have to rely on the Wu people to come and help every time. Ancestor, how are you? Can you still hold on? What do the two palace masters think of this matter? This time, the ancestor of their evil demon palace made a fool of themselves, and it was a serious matter. Half an hour later. The next time they arrived, a bloodthirsty figure appeared beside the two of them without any warning. He looked at them and joked. "I understand. It seems that I am really anxious about some things, which also makes you a little unable to do what you want. If this is the case, then Profound Heaven Sect is ready to start closing the world." Qi Huang touched his aching head and said nothing, but kept supporting Lu Wanbing with his hand. In the center of the hall, there were three people standing here, looking like they were reporting something important. "Yes." Shadow Demon on the side also nodded. "On the throne." Seeing this scene, the leaders of the other two major forces looked at each other, shook their heads, and led their men away. At this moment, Qin Xian lowered his eyes. The three of them had just told him everything they wanted to say. Afterwards, he led the powerful men from the evil demon palace to leave here. Profound Heaven Sect, in the majestic hall. The demonic shadow has transformed into the shadow demon and the soul demon again. The two are now on the bow of the ship, looking into the distance. Hearing this, Lu Wanbing slapped his head angrily and angrily said, "After all, we are still too weak, and we are given too little time to develop. When I go back this time, I have to make it clear to my master that we should be immersed in it for decades, or even a few years." Qi Huang, the master of the evil demon palace, has always been by Lu Wanbing's side. The master of Death Palace did not speak, and looked at Lu Wanbing, who was recovering from his injuries not far away. After hearing this, the two of them glanced at him. Demon Dao said, "On the netherworld boat." Seeing that his ancestor was so seriously injured, he quickly took out a bunch of top recovery pills and gave them to him one by one. "The reason why I haven't shown my best performance is because the speed of cleaning up the forces has been a bit fast recently. Only a group of strong men hiding in the dark were left looking at each other, but in the end they didn't say anything more and left one after another. Being able to fight beyond a large realm, Bloodthirsty can be said to be a top talent in the 10 realms. I can't die yet, but this injury may take decades to heal." As a result, the opponents he encountered became stronger and stronger, and he actually felt a sense of powerlessness and anxiety. At this moment, Qin Xian was also lost in thought. After half a stick of incense, he sighed, looked at the three of them and nodded. Hearing this, Bloodthirsty smiled slightly, and he thought so in his heart. "I found a problem this time. Our strength is still a bit too weak. In front of these apex-level experts, all our methods have no effect at all. Speaking of which, he himself seems to be about to reach the immortal sovereign realm, and he also has the blessing of the ancient demon dragon body. Even if he fights against the powerful immortal venerable, it is not a bad idea." After a few breaths, Qi Huang saw that Lu Wanbing's temperament was rosy and not as pale as before, so he hurriedly asked, "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 359. Having said this, Qin Xian looked at the others, looked serious, and said in a deep voice, "You also heard what I just said, so from now on, Profound Heaven Sect, will be closed for 7 years, and within these 7 years, all the top leaders of Profound Heaven Sect must reach the Profound Immortal Realm or above." Hearing this, the senior officials in the hall nodded without any intention of refuting, and unanimously raised their hands and said, "I will obey the orders of the sect master." A few hours later, the news spread like a flood to everyone in Profound Heaven Sect. Especially the top talents in Profound Heaven Sect today. They all seemed to have guessed this closure, and seemed to be preparing for the next big event. On top of a huge mountain peak, a pavilion stands here. Among them, 3 figures were sitting cross-legged with each other, talking and laughing happily, each with a smile on their face, and seemed to be saying something interesting. You also know the news. In my opinion, the sect leader is preparing to improve the strength of everyone in the sect this time. And after 7 years of birth, a big event will definitely happen. A handsome young man wearing white clothes and holding a folding fan sat among the 3 of them and whispered softly. This person is now Yan Qing, one of the 3 geniuses of Profound Heaven Sect. The other 2 are the swordsman genius Songfeng and the flesh-refining genius Wang. Get out of here. The 2 did not refute when they heard the words, and nodded. Songfeng held the sword and said calmly, "That's true, but I believe that once the world closes, many geniuses will emerge in that section. By then, the position of you and me as the 3 great geniuses may be lost." Wang Gengkai on the side heard this and was speechless. He didn't care at all about the position of the 3 geniuses. But Yan Qing is different. He is a competitive person. I saw a trace of disdain on his face, and he said arrogantly, "What are you afraid of? With me here, all the geniuses in Profound Heaven Sect combined are no match for me. Among them, only Tianming is a bit of a threat to us. Others like Long Tian are not afraid at all. Don't be so arrogant and look down on others, but you have to pay the price. Wang Gengkai, who was sitting silently aside, suddenly spoke up. Yan Qing glanced at him without caring and said, "But it's true, isn't it?" Wang rolled away but shook his head and said in a deep voice, "Although Long Tian's talent is not as good as the three of us, he has perseverance and persistence, and his marksmanship is no worse than Song Feng's swordsmanship. And many elders in the sect also use guns as their weapons. For example, Mo Chen, the deputy master of the law enforcement hall, is the case. I believe that on the day of death, Long Tian will definitely go to the master of Mo Chen to ask for marksmanship. By then, his strength will surely catch up with us." Yan Qing said nothing, lowered her eyes, and fell into thinking. After a while, she looked at Wang Gun and nodded. "That's true, but you made a mistake in one sentence, that is, his strength will improve. Won't my strength also improve? In these 7 years, my strength will definitely improve greatly. I believe I can break through to the profound immortal realm with my own talent. Maybe even the immortal king." As soon as these words came out, Song Feng, who had closed his eyes, suddenly opened his eyes, looked at him, nodded with a smile, and said, "That's right." Seeing this, Wang Gengkai didn't say anything more. Shui Yuling blinked her beautiful eyes and nodded, but her face was still a little confused and said, "That's right." Ling Sanjiao nodded. As an elder of the law enforcement hall, he still knew some inside information. "Is it possible that something happened to Sister Su Minjiao?" Hearing this, Sui Yuling nodded and replied, "These two people are Shui Yuling and Ling Sanjiao. Okay, Yuling, you can stop now. So how is Elder Minjiao doing now? She doesn't want to die anymore, does she? That's great." Seeing this, Ling Sanjiao did not make any detours and said directly. Hearing this, Shui Yuling's eyes widened, she covered her open mouth, showing a look of surprise, but she still asked with concern. "And this position is no worse than the head of the law enforcement hall. The figures of a man and a woman appear here. It's like this. You are practicing swordsmanship here. There are some things you don't know. Now, the sect master has given an order. Not long after the profound heaven sect, we will prepare to close the world for 7 years." After such a long time, Shui Yuling also knew that the person in front of her was the person she secretly wanted to see. "Then Elder Ling told me to stop. On top of a mountain peak full of peach blossoms. Why? With the current strength of the sect, there should be no need to close the world. Could it be that the sect leader is preparing for something big?" The man just acted as a spectator, watching quietly and standing aside, but he always kept a smile on his face. Elder Su Minjiao was attacked by the evil ghost sect among the 4 major forces in the realm of life and death, and was besieged by 3 peak experts from the ancient saint realm. In the end, he was sadly defeated. Elder Su Minjiao is very good now, and the sect leader has also given her a lot of compensation. Soon, Elder Su Minjiao will become the master of the Vermilion Bird Hall among the 4 holy halls. The woman is playing with a sword, and the elegant sword technique in her hand is extremely sharp, like pen and ink, dancing constantly. I know, it seems to be called Su Minjiao. What's wrong? Is there something wrong with my swordsmanship again? Shui Yuling, who was practicing swordplay, heard this and immediately stopped, put away the jade sword, looked at Ling Sanjiao with a pair of gentle eyes, and asked doubtfully. Although her strength is still a little weaker, at least her swordsmanship has improved and will not be as chaotic and unruly as before. What? Shui Yuling's pure white face showed a hint of surprise, and she said in confusion. Sometimes she had to sigh that fate was so wonderful, which allowed her to meet the person in the dark. After Ling Sanjiao's long-term teaching, Shui Yuling became more and more skilled in swordsmanship, and could even catch one of his own moves without losing. When it passes by, it will also cause the void to tremble, and the sound of breaking through the sky will flash from time to time. Therefore, Elder Suminjaya was almost violated. Fortunately, at that time, a strong man from our sect arrived in time to prevent this from happening. Meanwhile, on the other side, Ling Sanjaya glanced at her, nodded, and sighed. Because when our elder came back from the realm of life and death, something big happened. You should know about Elder Han Chuang's partner, right? No, your sword law manifestation has made great progress compared to before. I believe that in a short time, you will be able to reach the state where man and sword merge into one, and it will not be as formless as before. Ling Sanjaya shook his head with a smile and said softly. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 360. Hearing this, Suminjaya suddenly showed a happy expression, but seemed to have thought of something again and continued to ask. By the way, Elder Ling, I remember that Elder Minjaya also uses a sword, right? Hearing this, Ling Sanjaya's heart trembled, but he still nodded and replied. Yes, Elder Minjaya does use a sword, and I have seen her sword skills. They are very strong and domineering. You ask this because you want to learn swordsmanship from her, right? Shui Yuling nodded, smiled, and said. That's right. I want to ask Elder Minjaya how powerful her swordsmanship is, and see if I can combine what you taught me with the swordsmanship she taught me. Hearing this, Ling Sanjaya felt a little pain in his heart. It seemed that he didn't want to lose her, but he still hid it well. I very much support you doing this. After all, this way you can see the difference in the swordsmanship between the two, and you can better practice yourself. Seeing that Ling Sanjaya supported her so much, Shui Yuling showed a gentle smile to him. Without thinking much, she quickly handed over her hands to thank her, and then left here. Looking at Shui Yuling's leaving figure, Ling Sanjaya's eyes suddenly softened. Even though he felt reluctant to give up, he still had to give her some freedom. Otherwise, it will appear that you are too selfish. After all, feelings are not temporary. After teaching Shui Yuling for so many days, Ling Sanjaya never dared to express his love to her. He always taught her as a mentor, and he never took advantage of her or said any gentle words during the teaching process. They are all discussed as normal people. At this time, Fang Gu's figure suddenly appeared in front of him, patted Ling Sanjaya on the shoulder, and asked softly. How are you doing lately? Have you been successful? Hearing this, Ling Sanjaya glanced at him, shook his head with a hint of regret in his eyes, lowered his head and sighed. After all, I still don't have the courage, and I don't know how to express it. Over time, the idea of asking my disciples arose in my heart. Because when Ling Sanjaya was wandering around the sect, he often saw some disciples who were not good looking but could talk well and stayed with fair-skinned and beautiful junior sisters. But Fang Gu did not advise him to do this and said, those disciples are just too young to understand. They stay with their partners just for fun. I think you can try again and try to get closer. If it really doesn't work, let's talk about it. However, I advise you to say this as soon as possible, so as not to leave any regrets to yourself. Seeing this, Ling Sanjaya could only nod his head, but he felt a little melancholy and at a loss in his heart. This was due to his confusion about love. A few days later, the huge sect of the Profound Heaven Sect suddenly disappeared from the tomb of 10,000 ghosts, as if it had never appeared before. Despite this, the second palace will still not disappear. It will still be spread across the 4 regions as it is, collecting some important resources and information. This is also the accumulation of the second palace. They just won't fight with others, but if they encounter some troubles, they will still solve them. The moment the figure disappeared, an old man wearing a white robe and gray hair came here. This person's name is Zul Yang. Zhu Liang spent half a stick of incense and, guided by his feelings, came to a dark mountain range. After finding nothing, he shook his head and left. Hearing the voice coming from behind, Qianying, who was playing in the lake, was startled, turned around, her face was a little excited, she covered her mouth with her hand, and looked at him in shock. Although the Profound Heaven sect is closed to the world, there are still some geniuses who go out to find opportunities, so Qin Xian decided to set up a teleportation array in the center of the square. On the lake, there is a 10-meter large emerald green lotus leaf, which floats on the lake like a boat. Seeing this figure, Zhu Liang froze on the spot without moving. He looked at the woman sitting on the lotus leaf and shouted softly. You may. Half an hour later. But today Zhu Liang really couldn't bear it. He couldn't be with the one he loved. This was completely torturing himself. At this moment, Zhu Liang looked around with a pair of dark eyes, with vigilance in his eyes. When he saw that there were no elders nearby, he felt relieved and then came to the teleportation array without changing his expression. As if he felt something, the old man looked nearby. What's more, he doesn't want to stay in the sect because Zhu Liang wants to pursue what he wants. The whole story is that Zhu Liang got in touch with a monster race woman 3 years ago and fell in love with her. It made Zhu Liang feel very dreamy, and it felt like this place was like a fairyland on earth. But because of the isolation, Zhu Liang had no chance to go out, but he was unwilling to do so. During these 3 years of loneliness, Zhu Liang had been suffering in his cave mansion, holding on for dear life. Although the sect allows disciples to go out, they must inform the elders in advance and explain clearly the reason why they want to go out. If this is the case, then he should give up on this sect and fly away with the one he loves. After walking for a while, Zhu Liang came to the center of the mountains, where there was a sparkling lake. There is a pretty shadow sitting there quietly on the lotus leaf, with black hair hanging around her body and a shawl on her body, making people think about it. Zhu Liang used his identity as an inner sect disciple and with the help of several Soul Palace experts, he came to the place of monster race, the evil beast realm. Brother Zhu, is it you? Zhu Liang walked inside, and immediately under a burst of green light, his figure disappeared in place. In a cave mansion in Profound Heaven sect, a handsome man wearing a green robe packed some things and walked out of the cave mansion. At this moment, Zhu Liang thought that the current sect was trapping him like a shackles. It turned out that the sect could not give him the freedom he wanted, nor could he pursue what he wanted. That is the inner disciple of Profound Heaven sect, and his strength has reached the true immortal realm 3rd layer at this moment. 3 years later. Before Profound Heaven sect passed away, he had the opportunity to have an affair with his lover often. Although the Soul Palace experts thought Zhu Liang was strange, they didn't ask too much. However, he did not forget his own business, and then walked in with a wary expression. I saw butterflies emitting blue light everywhere here, and the butterflies in the sky were like stars, constantly flashing. In fact, Zhu Liang had violated the sect's rules by doing this. This thing is the happiness of his life. But Zhu Liang was afraid that he would not be able to get out after telling the elders the whole story, so he had no choice but to escape privately.